Now that we've had the soundbar up and running for a little while, some basic news and information that I want to go over with you. I've got some likes, some dislikes, some of the terminology that I use that might not have been correct. I'll correct that now. For example, I always call a soundbar, I think of the bass speaker as a bass reflex. That's just what's in my head, but I need to refer to this the correct terminology because this soundbar has three components. You've got the SoundTouch soundbar, you've got the compact Acoustimass wireless bass module. Now, Bose calls that a bass module. They don't call it a bass reflex. They don't even call it a subwoofer. It's a bass module. At what point do you get a subwoofer? I don't consider 5 1/4 inch a subwoofer, but that's what's in there. Now, with that said, it's got a great sound. When this thing works, it's great. And if you go online, look at some of the people with problems and curiosities, I want to go through some of that. I want to share with you some likes, some dislikes. Also, I showed you the remote. I'll tell you about some issues with that. I've got 3 remotes I'm still having to work with. And I'll talk a little bit about the connectivity, the HDMI, the HDMI ARC, the light pipe, and the Bluetooth. I've got a to-do list, what to do. I've also got a list of what I think not to do. And then I've got some other likes and dislikes as well as some FYI. So as I go through this, I want it to make sense, but I want to go through it according to how we get it set up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the input because I think this is real important. Remember, this is about the Samsung TV and this is about hooking up the Bose SoundTouch soundbar from Costco to that TV. And there are some quirks. For example, Bluetooth is what I did originally. I went through the other types of connections. Of my opinion, for what it's worth, I still think Bluetooth is the best way to go. Even with some of the gotchas, some things to be aware of. So the first thing I want to do, as the soundbar hooks up, without even talking about how it's done, I like being able to have a report. And if you'll notice, the icon over here for the speaker is muted, and by default I can use the speaker from the TV. Granted, it's lousy audio, but there's one setting in there that I'll show you how to make that TV speaker sound better. But as it relates to the soundbar, I want to be able to, for example, when I power everything on, I'd like everything to come on. That's not too much to ask. Well, apparently it is with Bose. Now, a lot of people have said a lot of different things about the HDMI AnyNet, which is on Samsung, the HDMI CEC on both devices, both Samsung and Bose. And since we had previous experience with a Bose speaker, one remote to turn everything on is not out of the question. Samsung can do it, but Bose cannot. Therefore, I lay that squarely with Bose to resolve with a firmware update. Now, with the first firmware update, and you could do that from a smartphone or from Windows, we did it from Windows. The manual needs to be rewritten because the manual talks about a USB cable. And for those of you that know me, I got tons of cables to do all kinds of stuff, but to have this special USB cable, I didn't have. So I had to get one. Didn't need it, didn't use it. You know, in this day and time, everything's networked. You can have wired or wireless. We just happen to wire our soundbar to the network. And the reason I'm going to mention that and preface this, anything that has to have a firmware update should be hardwired. What if you lose the connection? Then you've got other issues on how to get something connected to do the firmware, doing it manually. I like to keep things simple, and that's what this is all about. So when you do the firmware update, the first thing you're going to notice is the soundbar, when it attaches, the icon will change from what you used to see to what correctly identifies as the Bose SoundTouch 300. Sounds kind of neat. But does it solve the other problem with connectivity for one remote? No. For example, on Bluetooth, which is the easiest, I have to use, once the TV is on, I use this remote for the soundbar, and I turn it on, the upper left hand corner, and I'll preface this by saying I have reprogrammed this thing 3 times to go through some of the issues, and my concern and questions were, what's repeatable? Because of some of the issues, I'm going to show you a problem that when this doesn't connect, how to repeatedly solve it. So when I turn this on with this button, used to I could press the OK button, which enabled the TV with a comment you're going to see up here at the top of the screen, a button that'll highlight and say OK. If you miss that, you have to go back and either repair the connection or you have to delete the connection, repair, and then reconnect. And worst case scenario, you have to kill power to the soundbar. Don't worry about the subwoofer, excuse me. Don't worry about the bass module. You don't have to disconnect it. It'll automatically come back up. Even after resetting this 3 times, it automatically came back up. But connecting the soundbar to the TV where the problem was. So I used the remote for the TV to turn the TV on. Then I had to use the remote for the soundbar to turn the soundbar on. And then instead of hitting this OK button to accept the connection and pair, I had to go back to the TV button and use this button to connect and repair. Originally it worked, but I did 2 things. One, I updated the firmware, and number 2, I used the SoundTouch app to play music. Now, this is kind of a side note, but while I'm at it, that SoundTouch app is kind of neat for the fact that's how you update the firmware, but it's done through the network. So that's pretty easy, pretty bulletproof, doesn't take too long, just let it do its thing. What is an issue is playing music with it, because I spent so much time trying to get play music with it, and the only way to play music on that device, and I'm going to change inputs, and watch what you see on the inputs. This input is for the source, and this is going to come up more than once. Typically you'll have home, guide, and recordings because our source is AT&T UVerse. This is important. As you'll notice of other things I've watched, it now shows some of these other buttons that are most watched as I watch them. So I'm going to change my input, and I'm going to go to a computer, and I'm going to go to source. And if you'll notice my sources, I've got TV, which is coming off the antenna. I've got AT&T UVerse. Now, this is on Bluetooth. If I were on HDMI versus HDMI ARC, I would get audio from that source. Meaning, if I switch to the antenna or any other of the sources, I wouldn't get any audio. That's why you use HDMI ARC, or the audio return channel. So not only would I get what's routed through the soundbar for audio, but I would also get audio coming from the TV, which is on the antenna, or any of the other PCs. And if you'll notice, this third PC says home theater. Once you've done the firmware update, if you route through HDMI ARC, your source that you're connected to for your audio will either say home theater, or it may say Bose SoundTouch 300. Either way, whatever it says, you will lose the ability from the source to see. When I go back to this, you won't see this, which means I have control of the TV through the TV remote as well as through the Bose remote, instead of having to use this remote, which is AT&T UVerse. So those are options you have to consider. Now, I like to be able to turn the whole thing on and the whole thing off. If this is in the middle and I reach the source and I reach the TV source and the TV turn off, the TV through the source is routed through the Bose, that should turn off. It does. Well, why won't it turn on? It will not turn on. I can turn on these 2 items. This is in the middle, so signal passes through to the TV, but this Bose does not turn on. It has to be turned on manually. Now, when I turn on the TV and the source, which is UVerse, I have no audio when I'm routed through this. That's annoying. That's why I'm using Bluetooth, because when I turn on the TV and the source, I'm using the TV speaker, and I'll show you that setting, how to make that audio sound better, where the audio will be more intelligible. And then I have the option to then go turn on the soundbar. So I have those 2 options. But when I'm in HDMI ARC, it's strictly HDMI ARC. So pros and cons, everything should turn on, everything should turn off. That can be done with a firmware update, because Samsung can do it with their remote, with their TV, with their soundbar, but Bose can't do it. And it's not just with Samsung TVs. From what I've read in the help forums with Bose, it's got it with Sony, it's got it with Panasonic, and I believe also with LG TVs. So I put that squarely with Bose. And something else I'll mention while I'm at it, don't bother contacting Bose. They are absolutely clueless, and their help is of no value. All they can say is they're working on it. This has been going on for 2 years, but I will tell you, before I get into how to make all this work and how to do it repeatedly, some things you need to remember. Once you do the firmware update, I would not use the application. The application can take control of the soundbar and play audio, and it's gorgeous. but it does it through the list you create with the Microsoft application. If you're just looking to play those files, the application from Bose will never see those files until you create that list. Then it pulls that list, only one list, and only one list at a time, and it'll play whatever's in that list. So you can play from the computer to the soundbar, or you can use it through the TV as one of the inputs. My concern is that application, which is a SoundTouch app, which I'm using on Windows, should have a way to not only take control, but to release control. Now, to release control, you're supposed to go back to the remote, and if this works for you, good luck. It never did for me. This little button up here, which is for the TV, which we programmed for the Samsung, if you'll notice that, you're supposed to press that, and it will highlight when I press this button, which means it's in TV mode. Well, good luck with that, because it didn't work for us. What we had to do to get back control is we had to remove power to the soundbar, and apparently it resets to get control back to put it on the TV. But if you miss the pairing with the TV, you may have to delete the connection, recreate the connection, and then connect. That's a hassle, but I'm going to go through it and show you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the inputs. So I'm going to go to the Samsung remote, and we're going to go to one of the computers. Now, this says home theater system. This is what you'll probably get with your source, whatever that might be on HDMI. This happens to be a computer, but until it gets fully reset, that's what it's going to show. The cable's been disconnected from that for some time. It says home theater system, but it's actually computer number 3. Computer number 3, which is input number 4, is HDMI ARC, which is where I originally had things hooked up. So it's still remembering some of that, and that's one of the things you may see. So now I'm on this computer, so I can show you my notes. The Bose SoundTouch, let me get it over here where you can see it. Okay, drag that over here. I'll take it full screen. Okay, the Bose SoundTouch soundbar. You got 3 components: the SoundTouch soundbar, the compact acoustic wireless bass module, the universal remote. Connectivity is HDMI, HDMI ARC, light pipe, and Bluetooth. Now, we had light pipe hooking the first time working. After doing the resets, light pipe will not work for us. Even if light pipe were working, you would not have to be able to see the control, if you'll notice where the icon's blinking where the speaker's off. When the speaker's on, you're able to control the up and down, and you don't hear a click like you do with the Samsung, which was annoying, but with the Bose, you'll be able to physically see when you're going up, when you're going down in the volume. I like that ability. So light pipe worked initially, doesn't work now. Bluetooth is the best. What to do? Update the firmware. Use the SoundTouch app. They recommend from a smartphone. I did it from Windows. Now here's another thing I don't like. Automatically this thing will turn off if after 20 minutes the soundbar is muted. You have to go into the SoundTouch app and change that setting. I'll show you where it's at. I didn't like that because then you have to go through the rigmarole, turning it on, reconnecting, and hoping it connected. And if it didn't, having to go through the process, which was extremely annoying. So I just have changed it where it stays on when it's on, and when I turn it off, I turn it off. Because if I mute it, I might mute it for an hour, come back later. It's just annoying. What not to do. As I said, the SoundTouch app takes over the soundbar source input if playing music through the SoundTouch app. The application can take control of the soundbar, but there's no mechanism within the application to release control. To get control back, you're supposed to be able to use this remote by pressing the TV button up here in the upper left. That little button right there, which I'll press and highlight. And as I said, good luck with that. Didn't work for us. We had to remove power and start over. Now, like I said, when it works, that's great. When it doesn't, I find it kind of odd to have a network connection for my speakers, but to do the firmware update, and when you're doing the update, you're not sure what version of the firmware you're getting. The firmware update takes about 10 minutes, no big deal. And like I said, the biggest change I saw in the firmware update is where it changes the name from the name you used to see, numbers, and it'll now say Bose SoundTouch 300. That's the biggest difference I saw. The functionality change that we need to occur, where this thing can come on when everything else comes on, they need to do another firmware update. Samsung can do it, Bose could. Now, HDMI only sound from one source, HDMI ARC. You'll get sound from all sources because that returns the audio back. Can turn everything off, but it cannot turn everything on. And if the soundbar is off, there's no audio. That's why we're doing Bluetooth. So as I said, they need a firmware update. Now, Bluetooth from all sources, if the soundbar is off, we still get audio from the speaker, from the TV speaker. And as I mentioned, that's not a real subwoofer. But if I'm going to buy a soundbar based on what the Samsung soundbar did when it went out after 2 years, I take it back to Costco, started over, and that's why we went to this. Now, I will say that if Costco sells Sonos, but they don't have the Sonos soundbar. If Costco ever gets the Sonos soundbar, I'm in for that. So what I'm going to do now is get rid of this. I'll put it back on the computer because I'm going to show you how we connect this. Okay. Now this has to be line of sight with this remote, and you've got to get acquainted. Over here on the far left corner where the lights are at, you've got to be able to see that sensor where those lights are. So you need to get acquainted in the manual, which is a little bit rough. They need something that talks specifically about those lights on that left hand corner and what they do in the different modes that it's in. So we're going to turn this on, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect with audio, but I have to use this remote. Then I'll turn it off, go through it again using just this remote, and show you what happens and how I have to fix it. So we're going to turn on the soundbar. The light will come on. Then there's going to be a bar that comes across the top, and when that comes on, when the TV sees it, it highlights, we say yes, and we now have connecting. SoundTouch 300 is connecting. It made a little blip. We now have sound. So anything I were to play from this source, which happens to be a computer, we will hear. And so we don't get into copyright issues. I can't play a commercial source because we don't want to have those problems. But if I were to say go to build or buy, or let me see if I've got a video here I can call up. Let's put this up here on the big screen. And we now have 237 subscribers. I want to thank everybody for subscribing. I hope you enjoy this, and I pray this helps. Things may not be in order as you would want it, but it's in order the way I remember it. And it's kind of in order of things you need to be aware of, and FYI. So the reason I'm going to do this is I'm going to play a video so we can hear some audio. Hello everybody, welcome to Builder Bob. We're going to talk today about a Samsung TV. Question of the day, how long does a Samsung Smart TV last? Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the TV remote, and I'm going to go in and see where we're playing audio from. Or I can use the Bose remote and I can hit the volume up. Now I see a light blink on the soundbar, but I get no report on the screen. Or I can go to the source, which happens to be this AT&T Uverse remote, and I can hit the volume up and it says SoundTouch 300. It stays up as long as it's there. That's the biggest thing I see we got from the firmware update, SoundTouch 300. So sound is there, that's where we're playing from. So I'll go back to the remote for the TV, press the home button, and you hear the speaker. We'll go to settings, and it says SoundTouch 300 output. Now if I turn the soundbar off, because we're Bluetooth, we'll still hear sound out of the speaker. So I'm going to turn off the soundbar, and what would be nice, if you'll notice, it went back to TV speaker. So if we have sound from the TV speaker, play the video. We're going to have to start the video over because it still remembers the other source. Okay, we'll unmute. And that's something else to be mindful of. This is muted. Sometimes when you turn off the sound bar, the sound will unmute. That is not repeatable. And there's no telling when it will mute and when it will not mute. In other words, if I have the sound bar muted and I turn it off, the TV speaker may or may not be muted. Hard to say. It's not repeatable. So all you have to do is just go in, because it's blinking on the screen, unmute it. It says we're at 12. Question today, how long does a Samsung Smart TV last? Okay, what I'm going to show you now is how to make that sound from the speaker sound a little bit better, more intelligible. So we'll go to settings. I'm using the remote for the TV. We're going to settings, and I'm going to press that button in the middle. Sound, TV speaker, sound mode. By default, it's standard. I set it to optimized. I have not tried amplify, but optimized sounds a whole lot better because it sounds, as I said, more intelligible. But I'm on the TV speaker. Now while I'm here on sound output, I'm going to go look at my speaker list, which is Bluetooth, and it shows that it's paired, but it's not connected because it's off. So I'm going to show you what happens by getting out of that. Completely out of that. Okay, now this time we're going to turn on the SoundBar. This time we'll turn on the SoundBar using this remote. So the first thing we'll do is use the power up button. It should automatically be in the TV mode, so when we press OK it should activate. I'm going to show you what happens when this originally worked. It was great, but after the 3 resets this doesn't work for me. And as I said, I think that happened right after we did the playing of the audio files with the SoundTouch app. So I'm going to turn this on, turn on the SoundTouch. It comes on, and I'm going to try to use this remote, universal remote, and say OK. It worked that time. This is the 4th time I've tried to show that, and it works now like it did originally. But if it doesn't work, what you'll have to do, what my suggestion is to do, if that doesn't work and doesn't connect, sometimes going in, and this is what's difficult, showing it how to repeat it. I'm going to go into the settings for the SoundTouch sound, and what I've had to do when this doesn't work, because it connected right off, I've had to go in and not only disconnect, but I've had to delete the connection. And then what I've had to do on the remote, on the right side of the SoundTouch remote, there's an icon for Bluetooth. You press that Bluetooth button pointed at the SoundTouch soundbar, and the icon for that will change colors. It changes blue, and in which case it's looking for the device trying to pair it. Then you can go back in and tell it to find it, connect, or repair the connection, and then connect. You don't have to delete the setting from the remote. Now if you need to delete the setting from the remote, there's a key sequence you can do it, or you can do it from within the app. But I want to show you, which I'm blown away. I didn't think that would work. It hasn't been working, but now it is. And worst case scenario, I've had to, when the remote would not control the soundbar, all I did was unplug the power from it, waited about 10 minutes, plugged the power back in, and then I was able to get control with this remote. Why that happens, I have no idea. And that's after I did the update. I'm going to close that screen because we have audio, and if I press the remote for the sound to mute, it shows it's unmuted. Now it's muted. And if I press up on the remote with the AT&T U-Burst, it says SoundTouch. So let's play the video and see if we hear anything. 2 years and 3 months. We got audio works. So I'm going to go into the application now and show you a couple things. So let me get this video out of the way. Now the SoundTouch app, when I call it up, and this is how you create the account with Bose, it's through this app. When it first comes up, it says it's searching for the speaker. It found it, SoundTouch 300, and I've already got it set up for internet radio. If I started playing, it would play through that. Now if I had something playing on the TV or through one of the sources like this computer in the background, it would say unavailable, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to close this, call a video back up, get my browser back over here, full screen, Builder Buy. Hello everybody, welcome to Builder Buy. We're going to talk today about a Samsung TV. Okay, the reason for this, because this shows this is tied up, I'm going to call up the application for the SoundTouch app. Let me drop that down out of the way. Now this time the application comes up and it should say that it's not available, but it would immediately take over if I let it. SoundTouch 300, and you got to watch that if you ever play this stuff, because it's got the volume all the way up and it's ready to blast. So I'm going to go up here. I've already got my music library set. I'm going to go into settings, and that's where you create the account. You need to create the account before you can update it. Put in the account name and password, wherever you want to use, your email address. Music services, but I'm going into speaker settings. And this is where you do the update for the firmware, but I'm going to click on SoundTouch 300, English, Bluetooth, and this is where you would clear the list. I'm going to go back up here and go back, because I don't need to clear the list. Set Internet Radio Locale, Audio Settings, the center is already set center. We'll go back, Advanced Setup, HDMI CEC, Speaker Selection, and Auto Off. This is the one default, the first thing I do in this application. 1, update the firmware, and 2, change that auto off. Otherwise, when you mute this, it'll 20 minutes and then it'll shut off. And then you have to go back through turning it on and making sure everything works. Right now it's working better than it ever has. And I've waited until this point to show you what I thought was repeatable. And everything's working like it should. I'm amazed. You know, usually at Builder Buy we show stuff, we've done things, that when we get ready to show it, it doesn't show the same way. That's kind of what's happening here, except I was ready for the worst and we're having the best. So, go figure. Now I'm going to click on the, go back to speaker details, click on the SoundTouch, Advanced Setup, Auto Off, or Speaker Selection, and this is where you can temporarily turn the bass module off if you choose to, for whatever reason. Now if you turn off the bass module or surround speakers temporarily, the next time you power on the system, meaning the SoundTouch soundbar, it would automatically come back on. So I haven't done that because the whole purpose of a soundbar is to have that bass module. For example, if you listen to Jumanji and those drums in the beginning, whether you've done the firmware update or have not done the firmware update, go into your soundbar and increase the volume on the bass module. Makes all the difference in the world. It makes it palatable. See, I think sound ought to be felt as well as heard, but then again, I like Servant Vega and I like clips. And why don't I consider one of those for a soundbar? Because Costco doesn't sell it. And buying a set of speakers from Costco, if they go out, no big deal. I take them back, start over. So that's the application. You can play with it. Music services. I can also set up Amazon Music, which I have, but I have not. Play the music library on my computer. I did set up, but it took control. I had no intention of doing that again because the primary purpose for me for the soundbar is the TV. For the computer it's secondary, and if I've got all this stuff hooked up, instead of letting the computer through the application take over the soundbar, I'd rather do it this way, where I pick up, because I've got all the computers on the network, but I also have 3 computers because I have 4 inputs for sources on HDMI. So just like this, we're seeing this on HDMI. Let me close this app. So I've got the antenna, we hear audio, AT&T, which is our source. And by the way, I've also got a splitter on that source, so that's another reason why Bluetooth works better for me. PC1, PC2, the red dot means PC2 is off, but I would still, through the network, be able to access PC2 if I wanted to play some of the media on it. And right now, PC number 3 happens to be the laptop, which is showing up as home theater system. Your HDMI source may show up as home theater system, or it may show up as the Bose 300. It depends. And I expect after a few resets or off and on that that'll change. So if I want to go to that computer, and the purpose of this is to play the music, the TV still has control. I can still see that stuff. But I can not only play music, but I can also play videos. So whatever videos are on this hard drive, I can see those as well. And I have a few up here. And if I want to go to the laptop, I'll exit the app, go back up to sources. If I want to go to the laptop, this is why it's important your devices have a name specific so you know when you're changing devices what device you're on. But I'll go to that laptop, and I'm using my TV remote. I could use the universal remote, but I'm just not that comfortable with it. But as of tonight, it's working like it's supposed to. So I can go music, see what all I've got, and there's a lot there. Up a folder, or if I want to see the videos that are here. I gotta say, I really like the universal remote that comes with the Bose. It's really nice. It's even nicer when it works. All videos, and I've got some videos here for that. Whatever's on the hard drive. Elohim, Half Love, Gwen Stefani, Holler Back Girl, Santa Baby, Zed, Charlie Puth, What Have You Done For Me? So that's kind of what I've got. I'll press the exit button, and I go back to this. Nice. So that's pretty much it with the Bose SoundTouch soundbar. If you're interested in something like this, we'd appreciate if you would subscribe. Thumbs up would also be appreciated. I hope you found this information useful. To me, it was a bit confusing in the beginning because you got 3 components. Hooking it up was pretty straightforward and simple. When things got complicated was when we started trying to, after we did the firmware update, playing with that application to play sound. It was really cool while it was going on, but it took me forever to get control back from that application to the TV. So I would say beware, be careful, and also hook up. You can try the HDMI ARC, but for me it didn't do what I wanted. The simplest connection for me, and we like to keep things simple, is doing this through Bluetooth. So hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next video. And I appreciate your time and pray we used it wisely. See you in the next one. Have a great day.